If God exists, how did he decide what's right and wrong? Did he just pick willy-nilly, or was he forced to pick a particular way? Let's consider. Hello philosophers, I'm Chico. Welcome to the Philosopher Show, where we consider the greatest questions of human history. There's a famous dilemma in the philosophy of religion called the Euthyphro Dilemma. In Plato's dialogue, the Euthyphro, Socrates asked the titular character Euthyphro, do the gods tell us that certain things are good because they already are good? Or are those things good because the gods say so? Now, obviously, this was given in ancient Greece, where they had a pantheon of gods. Things are a little bit different, but we could sort of rework this in order to apply to a more modern kind of theology, especially a monotheistic theology. So we can ask the question, does God say certain things are right or wrong because they already are right or wrong? Or are they only right or wrong because God just says so? Now you may wonder, why is this a problem? Well, let's pick two kinds of actions. One that's clearly right and one that's clearly wrong. For the clearly right one, let's say saving somebody's life that's an innocent person where there's no negative repercussions. For the clearly wrong one, let's say torturing babies for fun. Now I know, I didn't come up with that, okay? That is a standard philosophical example. The whole reason people do that is because it's so abhorrent, and there doesn't seem to be any reason for it, that it seems like if anything is wrong, that's gotta be wrong. So yeah, I didn't come up with that weird example. Well, let's consider our first option. Just so you know, I might slip between verbiage here. It's in a dilemma, they typically say the horns of a dilemma. So this is horn one then. It could be the case that saving an innocent person's life is good, torturing babies for fun is bad. God knows these things are true, so God tells us not to do these things. What could be wrong with this option? Well, most objections to it have to do with certain attributes of God that people believe God should have. So for example, sovereignty. In order for God to be really God, it seems like he should be totally in charge, right? He should be radically sovereign, able to dictate how the entire universe goes. But on this view, he's getting told what to do and what not to do. He's being told, say that these things are right and say that these things are wrong, and he doesn't have any say in that, which makes us think, is he really in charge here? It seems like there's something that's more in charge than him. So on this option, it seems like God is not totally sovereign. Another attribute is omnipotence, being all-powerful. Now, saying that God is all-powerful is kind of a tricky thing, and there are a lot of different ways to cash that out. Exactly what does that mean? But one, at least very tempting idea is that being all-powerful means that you can do all things. So a being that is all-powerful would have no constraints on him whatsoever, and yet, look at this. This seems to be a constraint on God. God can't make torturing babies for fun a good thing, thank goodness, right? So if we choose this horn of the dilemma, then it seems like God cannot be omnipotent, which seems to be kind of an important attribute for him. The third attribute I'll talk about is the freedom of the will. Now, I'm not really sure exactly what I think about this. Free will can be a really tricky kind of philosophical idea. But the idea is something like this. Having more free will rather than less is a good thing. If I'm pre-programmed to make the decisions that I make, that's not so good. But if I have some say in the matter, it seems like that's a better thing. But God should be perfect, right? So it seems like he should have an unlimited amount of freedom. But here on this option, it seems like he's not free to choose. He can't choose what is right and wrong, it's just told to him. So it seems like this restricts his freedom, which isn't good. Now I should say that some philosophers have no problem with this, but it seems like what we're saying is torturing babies for fun is evil and saving innocent lives is good before the universe exists, before God has decided what to do, and it seems like that might be a problem for the following reason. Consider things before God created the universe. So, this is pre-Big Bang if you're a Big Banger. No space, no time, no matter, no energy, nothing like that. On this view of theism, all that's left is God. But the claim is that these things are true apart from God. So this would be an impossible thing. If God exists, then he exists necessarily, or at least a lot of philosophers think so. So although by this hypothesis, God has always existed, he couldn't change, etc., per impossible, as they say in Latin, I am a Latino, just for teaching purposes, let's consider God not there, right? But consider that God would be gone. Now what's left? If you're picturing some big black field, that's something, right? An empty field is something. If you're considering some kind of empty matrix, that also is something. No, on this scenario, there is nothing. So apart from God, apart from the universe, there is nothing for these things to be true about. It seems really bizarre. I mean, maybe it's possible, but it seems really hard to see how there could be true things if there was just nothing. Now, reintroduce the concept of God, And it seems like that hasn't changed anything about these truths. How are these things true apart from God, apart from the universe? That seems pretty mysterious. For these reasons, some philosophers have said that maybe these things are kind of like some kind of cosmic entities. Maybe these moral rules have some kind of being of their own. They're some kind of eternal abstract things. Now, to me, to be honest, that doesn't make much sense. They're supposed to be moral laws, and yet they're some kind of entities. I picture some kind of ghost piece of paper with something written on it, thou shalt not torture babies for fun. And I realize that's not what they would be like. But then the question is, what would they be like? They're not entities of their own kind. They are entities talking about stuff that doesn't exist. What is that? And even if they're talking about something that does exist, how do they cause those things to be right and wrong? It seems like they wouldn't have any way to cause, right? They're these abstract entities that exist apart from all things. I mean, maybe it's possible, but it sure seems hard to understand how. And not only that, consider those first three objections we gave to this option. Those objections about how this is inconsistent with different attributes of God's existence. Well, now things just got worse. Because not only are there these rules that are binding God's free will, that are things that he doesn't have power over and things that he's not sovereign over, these things are also now entities. So it's not just that they're true, but they're like these real beings out there that God has no say about. It seems like things just got worse for our theory of God. Now, this is called a dilemma because either choice that you take is going to be unsavory, right? There's going to be something that you don't like, and that's the whole point of a dilemma. We've seen what makes the first option here difficult. What about that second option? Well, join me for the next video when we'll consider the second horn of the Euthyphro Dilemma.